What happens when justice itself betrays the innocent? On a chilly morning in Brooklyn, a police officer's anger leads to a heart-wrenching scene outside a bustling schoolyard. A young black boy, Theo, known for his bright smiles and resilience despite his disability, finds himself the target of a racially charged injustice. As children scatter and the bell rings, a heated argument unfolds. Theo, sitting in his wheelchair, watches helplessly as the officer approaches, his face a storm of rage and disdain. Theo had always been cautious, aware of the stares and whispers that followed him because of his wheelchair. But today, he was just waiting for his dad to pick him up, nothing more. The officer, however, saw something else. Misinterpreting a playful scuffle between Theo and another child, he storms over, his temper flaring. "Enough!" he barks, grabbing Theo's wheelchair and wheeling him roughly to the side. The squeak of the wheels on the pavement sounds like a scream in the suddenly silent air. "Hey! That's my son!" a voice roars from a nearby car. Theo's father, Michael, had arrived just in time to witness the scene. His heart drops as he rushes over, fear and anger mingling in his eyes. Michael, a respected journalist, had always fought against racial injustice through his writings, but now the battle was personal. As the confrontation escalates, bystanders begin to gather, whispering and filming. The officer, realizing he is being recorded, reluctantly backs off, but not before hurling a warning at Theo and his father. "Watch yourselves," he sneers, as if the mere act of existing in that space was a crime for Theo. Michael kneels beside his son, examining the wheelchair for any damage. He looks into Theo's eyes, trying to find the right words. "It's okay," he murmurs, but the tremble in his voice betrays his worry. The crowd's murmur grows louder, their eyes not just on the officer, but on them, as if this spectacle was just another day's entertainment. But today was different. As Michael consoles Theo, one of the bystanders steps forward, her face set in determination. She had captured everything on her phone. "This isn't right," she says, her voice firm. "This needs to stop." She hands her phone to Michael. "For Theo," she adds, a silent pledge of solidarity. Michael nods, a plan forming in his mind. With Theo's courage fueling his resolve, he decides to turn this painful moment into a catalyst for change. That evening, the footage goes viral, sparking outrage and a citywide debate on police behavior and racial profiling. In the days that follow, Theo becomes more than just a boy in a wheelchair. He becomes a symbol of resistance against injustice. Supported by his father's relentless advocacy and the community's rallying cry, changes begin to take shape. The officer is suspended, pending an investigation, and the police department initiates new training programs focused on sensitivity and racial bias. As Theo watches the news with his father, he realizes that his story has inspired others to speak out and stand up for what's right. "Dad, did we do something good?" he asks, his eyes wide with a mix of innocence and newfound strength. "We did, Theo." "We did," Michael replies, hugging his son. "You showed them what courage looks like." The story of Theo and Michael ends not just with a resolution, but with a lesson that resonates deeply. That change, often sparked by the most unexpected moments, begins with the courage to act. Their story, a mix of pain and triumph, leaves a lasting imprint on the hearts of all who witness it, a reminder of the power of voice and the enduring fight for justice. Theo's story begins to ripple across the community, touching hearts and igniting a fervor for justice and equality. The video, now shared thousands of times, becomes a beacon for those who felt the harsh grip of injustice without a voice to speak out. In the heart of Brooklyn, a meeting is organized, attended by community leaders, activists, and residents. They gather in a large, echoing hall, their faces a tapestry of resolve and expectation. Michael is invited to speak, and as he stands at the podium with Theo by his side, The room hushes in anticipation. Why? Why did it have to come to this? Michael starts, his voice steady but thick with emotion. We're here today because my son, and countless others, have faced injustices that should never be part of their daily lives. The crowd nods, their murmurs a wave of agreement. He talks about the need for real, impactful changes in police training, about community-based oversight, and the power of holding those in authority accountable. We need to ensure that no other child, no other family, goes through what we did. It's time for change, and it starts with us, right here, right now. The room erupts in applause, the sound booming against the walls, as powerful as the message itself. Inspired by Michael's words and Theo's bravery, the community forms a coalition, the Unity for Change Initiative, focusing on transparency and fairness in law enforcement. Theo, once a quiet boy in a wheelchair, now attends these meetings regularly, his insight and spirit a guiding light. Meanwhile, the officer involved in the incident faces his own reckoning. Tasked with attending workshops on racial sensitivity and community engagement, he confronts the biases that led to that fateful day. With each session, his perspective begins to shift. The faces of the community, the stories of struggle, the hopeful eyes of children like Theo, reshape his understanding of duty and service. As months pass, the effects of Theo's story are palpable. The police department launches a new program, Voices Heard, aimed at bridging gaps between officers and community members. Schools across the city start initiatives on inclusivity and understanding, using Theo's story as a pivotal example of courage and the impact of speaking out. One evening, as Theo and his father walk through their neighborhood, they notice new murals brightening the walls, symbols of unity and resilience. A local artist, moved by Theo's courage, has painted a vibrant mural depicting a child in a wheelchair, arms spread wide, surrounded by a crowd of diverse faces. Underneath, in bold letters, the words, "Change begins with us." Theo stops, his gaze tracing the colors and shapes. "Look, Dad, that's me," he exclaims, his voice a mix of awe and pride. Michael smiles, his arm around Theo's shoulders. "Yes, it is. And every time someone sees this, they'll remember what you helped do here." As the sun sets, casting a warm glow over the mural, Theo and Michael continue their walk, their shadows long on the pavement but their spirits lifted high. Their journey has transformed from a personal struggle to a community triumph, a story of a boy who sat quietly in his wheelchair but whose resolve roared louder than injustice, changing his community and beyond. As the community's efforts gain momentum, the initiative spearheaded by Theo and Michael begins to attract attention far beyond Brooklyn. Journalists and media outlets from across the country are drawn to the story of the young boy in the wheelchair who spurred a movement. During an interview with a major news network, Theo sits beside his father, his voice firm yet imbued with the innocence of youth. "I just wanted people to be nice to each other, and to me. Why can't we all just be kind?" he asks, his question hanging in the air, a poignant reminder of the simplicity of his wish against the complexity of societal issues. The story resonates so deeply that it catches the attention of policymakers. Encouraged by the public's response and the clear need for change, a senator invites Theo and Michael to a roundtable discussion in Washington, D.C. The halls of power, usually echoing with debates and decrees, quiet down as Theo rolls in, his presence commanding attention not by force but by the virtue of his experience and his courage. At the round table, Theo listens intently, then speaks with a clarity that belies his age. "It's scary when people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you are scared of. We should change that, shouldn't we?" His words strike a chord, and the discussion that follows is filled with a renewed sense of purpose. Proposals for national guidelines on police training and community interaction start taking shape, inspired by the Unity for Change initiative's success. Back in Brooklyn, the local police precinct invites Theo to be part of their community outreach program. The officer who had once confronted him is there too, His demeanor changed. He's learned from his mistakes, a testament to the program's success in fostering understanding and empathy. "I'm sorry for what I did, Theo. I've learned a lot since then," he admits during one of their sessions, his apology sincere. Theo nods, accepting the apology with grace, understanding that forgiveness is another step towards healing and growth. The impact of Theo's story continues to unfold as communities across the nation take note and initiate their own dialogues for change. Schools incorporate lessons on civic responsibility and empathy into their curricula, inspired by Theo's story. Police departments engage in similar initiatives, eager to mend ties with their communities. 1 year after the incident, a grand community celebration is organized in Brooklyn, marking the anniversary of the movement that started with Theo. The event is filled with music, laughter, and stories of change. Theo is there, not just as a guest, but as a symbol of what it means to speak out, to inspire. "Look how much we've achieved together," Michael says to the crowd, his arm around Theo, who is now more than just his son or a boy in a wheelchair. He is a catalyst for change. As fireworks light up the night sky, the community stands united, stronger and more cohesive than ever. Theo watches, his eyes reflecting the vibrant explosions above. His journey from a victim of an unjust act to a beacon of hope is complete, yet the ripple effects of his courage are just beginning to reshape the world around him. With each burst of color in the sky, it's clear that the real change has only just begun. As the celebrations fade, the real work continues. The seeds of change planted by Theo's story have taken root, and now it's time to nurture them. In the weeks following the community celebration, Michael and Theo travel to different cities, speaking at schools, town halls, and police departments. They share their story, not just recounting the events, but focusing on the lessons learned and the importance of empathy and understanding in community policing. Theo, once shy and reserved, has grown into his role as a speaker. With each presentation, he becomes more confident. "If my story can make things better for even one person, then everything we went through was worth it," he says during a talk at a high school. His words resonate with the students, who see in him not just a hero but a peer who made a significant difference. Meanwhile, Michael works with local and national leaders to draft legislation that would ensure what happened to Theo doesn't happen to another child. They call it Theo's Law, a comprehensive set of policies aimed at improving how police interact with young people, especially those with disabilities. The law also includes provisions for regular community and police forums, designed to build trust and open dialogue. The culmination of these efforts comes when Theo's Law is brought before Congress. Theo and Michael watch from the gallery as senators debate its merits. The discussion is intense, with moments of passionate advocacy for the bill. Finally, the vote is cast, and the bill passes overwhelmingly. Cheers break out in the chamber, and Theo feels a mix of relief and disbelief. "We did it, Dad. We really did it," he exclaims, his voice echoing slightly in the grand space. Back in Brooklyn, the community gathers once again, this time to watch Theo and Michael on a large screen as they speak at a press conference on the steps of the Capitol. "This law represents not just our hopes, but our commitment to each other as a community, as a nation," Michael states, Theo by his side. The crowd back home claps and cheers, their faces alight with pride and hope. As the year turns, Theo's life returns to some semblance of normalcy, but the impact of his actions continues to be felt. Schools across the country implement programs inspired by his story, aimed at fostering a greater understanding among students of different backgrounds and abilities. Police departments report a decline in incidents similar to what Theo experienced, and the community police forums become a regular part of life in many cities. One quiet evening, Theo and Michael sit on their front porch, reflecting on the journey. "Do you think things are really changing?" Theo asks, looking up at the stars. Michael puts an arm around him, pulling him close. Yes, I do. Because of you, because of what we all did together. Change takes time, son, but it's happening. And it started with you. Theo smiles, comforted by his father's words and the quiet around them. He knows that change is slow and often challenging, but as he looks at the peaceful street before him, he feels hopeful. In his heart, he carries the belief that even the smallest voice can echo loudly, changing hearts and minds, shaping a better world. Months after the implementation of Theo's law, its effects are evident, but for Theo and Michael, the journey doesn't stop with legislation. They continue to engage with communities nationwide, speaking at events and workshops, ensuring that the spirit of the law isn't lost in its application. Their story, shared in documentaries and social media campaigns, becomes a learning tool, a narrative of overcoming adversity through unity and perseverance. One summer day, Theo is invited to speak at a national youth leadership conference. Standing before a crowd of young leaders, he feels a surge of nervous excitement. Every voice matters, no matter how small it might seem. He begins, his voice steady and clear. I used to think I couldn't make a difference because I was just a kid in a wheelchair, but I was wrong. We all have the power to change things around us. His words, simple yet powerful, inspire the audience, many of whom will go on to lead their own initiatives for social change. Back in Brooklyn, the community center now bears Theo's name, and it's here that Theo and Michael host regular forums between police and the community. During one session, a young police officer speaks about the changes within the department. Theo's story opened our eyes. It's about more than just following procedures. It's about seeing the people behind the situations. The community listens, engaging in a dialogue that feels more like a bridge-building session than a formal meeting. Theo also visits schools to talk to students about disability awareness and inclusion. At one school, he demonstrates how he navigates daily life. His wheelchair no longer a symbol of limitation, but one of empowerment. It's not just about adapting to the world, but also about adapting the world to fit all of us, he explains. The students watch, captivated by his confidence and candor, many of them never having considered the perspective of someone living with a disability. Through these dialogues, Theo realizes the ripple effect of his story extends beyond policies and laws. It's about the hearts and minds he touches. Each speech, each interaction plants seeds of empathy and understanding, cultivating a generation more aware and accepting of differences. As the second anniversary of Theo's law approaches, a special ceremony is planned. Theo and Michael are to be honored by the city. The evening is filled with speeches and accolades, but the most touching moment comes when a young girl, inspired by Theo to advocate for accessibility in her own school, takes the stage. Theo showed me that being different doesn't mean being less, she says, her voice quivering with emotion. He taught us that everyone has a role in making society better. That night, as Theo lies in bed, he reflects on all that has happened. The struggles and triumphs blend into a story of unexpected heroism, not just his but of everyone who took a stand because of his journey. His father's words echo in his thoughts. You sparked a flame, Theo, a flame that lit up a path for so many others. Outside, the city sleeps, but the wheels of change, once set in motion by a young boy's courage, continue to turn. Theo knows his journey isn't over. It has merely shifted paths. Now, it's about ensuring that the flame he ignited burns brightly, guiding the way for others to follow. As he drifts off to sleep, he smiles, comforted by the thought that his story is part of a larger narrative of hope and change, one that will continue to inspire long after his own chapter has ended.